Hi, everyone. You're listening to Bach Talk, a podcast created by members of the entomology department at Michigan State University. And we're back from our summer break. Thanks for bearing with us. And today we have an episode that's focusing on graduate students, mostly in our department, but maybe this is a useful episode for other graduate students in other departments as well. It gives you a little bit of an insight about how graduate students are communicated with and the things that we talk to them about during, for example, the new graduate student orientation that we're going to be touching on. My guests today are Anthony Cognato. Anthony, hi.
Hi.
Can you please introduce yourself briefly and why you're here on this call today, mainly?
Sure. I wear many hats in the department, but I am the graduate program director. I'm in charge of recruitment and also the larger concerns of the graduate students. I'm also a professor of insect systematics and direct the A.J. Cook Arthropod Research Collection.
Excellent, thank you. And then my other guest is Heather Leonardson. Hi, Heather.
Good morning, hi.
And Heather also wears many hats in the department, but let's focus on why you are on the call.
I am basically the academic person in the department. I am the graduate secretary. And so I assist all of our graduate students with getting the information they need in order to get through their programs, from, starting with employment and assistantships all the way to degree requirements and paperwork and degree audit at the very end when everything is done. So I assist all the way through the process.
Yes, Heather is the best friend of all graduate students in the department because she knows how all the paperwork needs to be filled out and how we need to manage the system. And she corrals all the graduate advisors to make sure that we're all staying on track. So awesome. Thank you, Heather.
Mm-hmm.
And today's podcast was mainly triggered by the fact that we had our new graduate student orientation just last week. And so I want to turn it over to Anthony for a second here to talk about what's the new graduate student orientation. It happens every year in our department. What did it look like this year? What are the kinds of things that you talk about? How many graduate students attended this year? So yeah, anything that you feel like you can share with us.
Great, thanks, Sophia. Well, yes, it occurred last week on Monday and Tuesday, and we had 2 half-day sessions. This year, we did it through Zoom as last year, and this is due to COVID restrictions. Usually we meet in person, and we usually end the orientation with a tour of campus. Unfortunately, that did not happen last year and this year. So hopefully the students will be able to explore campus when on their own time. Anyway, for this year, we have 14 new graduate students. Most of them joined orientation. They primarily make up master's students. There are 9, and there are 5 new PhD students. During the meeting, we cover pretty many topics concerning graduate students, from enrolling in classes, for choosing committees, to just the resources available on campus, employment, parking, and we discuss conflict resolution and also mental health issues. And in this year, also what is new, Dr. Rufus Isaacs gave a seminar on the history of land-grant universities and the history of MSU.
Awesome. And Heather, can you talk a little bit about what jumped out at you this year? Was there anything new? I know the online format is different, but is there anything remarkable that happened this year during the orientation? Was there anything new?
I think this year, the information that we really tried to get out that's new for all students, undergrads and graduates, is the new student information system. It is the new system that's electronic, that students essentially, it is kind of your one-stop shopping for graduate students. You enroll in classes through this new campus solutions system. You access your student account. There is, for our graduate students now, for our PhD students, for a while there has been an electronic system that tracks their degree progress that is called grad plan. And so it tracks everything from the guidance committee members to the classes that a student's going to take. It records exams like the comprehensive exam and the oral dissertation exam that are required for our PhD students. And that is now, it's going to look different for our PhD students, but essentially what is required is the same. The big difference is now master's students all have to submit a grad plan, which takes the place of what previously has been called the Memorandum of Understanding form. Pardon me. And so that is going to be required for all students, all master's students that are graduating fall semester 2021 and beyond. So this is a similar format to the PhD, where a graduate guidance committee is submitted and approved, courses are submitted and approved. The expected thesis title is entered, and once that student completes their degree, their oral defense is entered, and then it goes through the approval process to get conferred. So that's a really big change for our students this year. The student information system was gradually started to be instituted early this year. So they're still working out a lot of bugs with it, but I think once everything gets completed, it'll be a really good and useful system for not only our students, but the faculty and the staff who assist students through their degrees. Probably the other big thing was the responsible conduct of research issues and requirements. This has been something that the university has really pushed over the last years. It will be, we're not sure exactly when it's going to begin, but it will be a requirement in order for students to earn their degrees in the future. If students don't complete the responsible conduct of research requirements during their degree program, their degree will be denied. So that's another really big change that it's important that all of our students and faculty are aware of, so that way everybody can kind of be a part of that process and make sure it gets completed and doesn't stand in the way of a degree for a student.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I thought that the RCR requirements were already like built into maybe our department's requirements. I'm not sure if how that works, but it sounds like now it's a broader university level requirement, right?
That's correct. Yes, they're instituting more and better ways to track when students are able to complete their RCR. They are updating and making better tracking systems for the online modules that are required for students, face-to-face requirements that will and sometimes need to be entered manually, but the university is making great strides in having better tracking for these requirements, since it will eventually be a requirement for a degree. Up to now, the department has required it. You are absolutely right. We've wanted our students to do this. It's important information for all of our students to have, but it wasn't necessarily going to prohibit the university from approving a degree, and in the future it will, if it's not completed.
And so this is in that portal that you were talking about,
Right.
being tracked, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. And I think a student at this particular point, I believe a student is able to see what their RCR is. I'm not positive on that. I'm not able to see the student side of grad plan and the student information system, but I can certainly see it. So that way I can alert students to what they need to do and what they need to complete. And once a student completes certain phases of the plan, I'm able to mark it as complete. So that way everything is reflected in their academic record.
Is that pretty automatic that students sign into this account, so that the old system is now like not even allowing them to sign in? They can only sign into this new
Yes,
website?
I believe so. I believe if students try to log into the old way of seeing their student information, they probably are not going to see anything beyond summer of 2021. Because the legacy system, when I look at the legacy system, I can't see anything beyond 2021. So I think it's a way that they're kind of forcing students to go to student.msu.edu, log in with their MSU net ID and password. I believe for students, two-factor authentication is required. So if a student doesn't have that, they do need to be sure to set it up through the IT services department. Most of our students, I believe, do have it set up though, because they use it to access different websites, like our accounting website throughout the university. But I think that there is definitely a push for students to be able to only be able to get their information from this website.
Yeah, so I guess it's going to clear up some confusion, because a lot of the documents that we had to turn in were like on paper, the old-fashioned way. We had to hand it around to committee members to have everybody sign it. So it's going to make it, I think, a lot smoother process. And it's nice that students can log into one instead of like have to log into a separate website to sign up for courses and another website to do the degree thing. So that's, I think that's
Exactly.
going to be a positive move forward.
I totally agree. There's also through this website, actually, students now see class schedules as well, the schedule of courses. That used to be separate. Now that's also in there, which is important to note. And it also is a way for the public can see. That's about the only public part of the student information system, is that anybody could log into student.msu.edu. And the only probably tile that they're going to see to have an option, if you're, let's say you're a parent and you want to see what classes are available for your child, you will be able to see them through this website by clicking on the class schedule link.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Very cool. And then I guess at some point, advisors are going to have to get used to this new system as well, because I have definitely been learning how to approve and manage students through this system. So I don't know how well our department's members are aware of this, but it's definitely a little bit of a learning curve for us as well.
Yes, it's a learning curve for everybody, myself included.
Yeah, I can imagine that. So yeah, that's great information. Thanks, Heather. And then I think the other thing that we wanted to talk about here today, well, one of the other things that we wanted to talk about today was fellowships. And I know that, Anthony, you're really involved in putting packages forward, because I think one thing that a lot of students don't understand is that there are many fellowships available that they themselves don't have to put in an application for. It's the department that puts their basically application materials that they submitted to the graduate school forward to the fellowship committee for consideration. And so a lot of those have deadlines in, December-ish or January. So why don't you, Anthony, share with us some of those fellowships that are coming up, and maybe when people should be thinking about submitting their application packets by, to be able to, and maybe also talk about how you end up being considered for one of those.
Okay, yes, the two fellowship programs that I'm personally involved in is the Plant Science Fellowship and the University Distinguished Fellowships. Both of these require the Department of Entomology to forward suitable graduate applicants to these programs. So application materials for graduate school has to be approved by the entomology department around December 1st or so, because the processes for evaluating these applicants for both programs occur in January and February. So for the Plant Science Fellowship, the department will forward those students that have planned research in areas of insect-plant interactions. So the Plant Science program considers all research across campus that deals with plants as the potential for funding a student in their program. Okay, and so as long as the student in their application describes their research interests, their academic interests in plant and insect interactions, this makes them eligible to be considered for the Plant Science Fellowship. And from there, we get, we'd say, between 40 and 50 applicants for this program. And
let's point out that not all of those are entomology applicants. They're
right.
from all over different departments.
Yes, entomology puts forward between 1 and 3 applicants per year. And it is a very competitive process. And the Plant Science Fellowship Committee tends to look for recruiting students from outside of MSU. It doesn't mean that they won't fund a undergrad from MSU or a master's student from MSU, but they have to be sort of top-notch. Another important consideration is that the student already has a professor committing to help fund them. So the Plant Science Fellowship will fund, I think we're moving to 1 year of full funding, and the committee expects the professor and the department to come up with a financial plan for the other 3 to 4 years that they may be getting their PhD. And then there's grades, and then that goes through the first cut, and then there's a recruitment event that occurs in February. And hopefully, last year it was virtual, but hopefully this year perhaps it'll be in 2022 it'll be in person again, and where students have to give a presentation on their of their research that they've done in the past or what they plan to do. And then they will also meet with other potential committee members and tour facilities. And then there's another review process that's where students are discussed and evaluated, and the list of applicants get whittled down to maybe about 8 offers or so. Not all students that are offered this fellowship come to MSU, so they tend to have a large list. And then there's the University Distinguished Fellowship, and that is mostly based on grades and letters or the essays that students write in their application. We based mostly on let me backtrack, based on their total package from entomology, which includes usually a higher GPA average and also their letters of their personal statement and their academic interests. Those students, I will write a letter in support of that applicant. It goes to the college. The college then reviews the applicants and sort of pulls out those they feel would not be successful at the university level. And then they forward that package to the university. The university does emphasize some component of diversity, and it could be anywhere from an underrepresented student to those that say had a unique upbringing, say homeschool education in the wilds of South America or something like that, that will make them add some diversity component to the university. And those are usually, we know about the outcomes of that in, say, March or so.
So the deadline for that is about the same time, like early December. You have to have your packet submitted to the graduate school.
Yes. And I think they want, like in early January, they want some, but we need time to evaluate all the applicants.
And so, sorry, Heather, go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. The one thing I did want to just quickly mention is that these fellowships that Anthony is mentioning, you are required to be a U.S. citizen in order to be considered. Unfortunately, international students are not eligible for these two fellowships. So I think that that's something that's important to mention for people listening and that might be interested.
Yes, thanks,
and
Heather.
being considered. Mm-hmm.
And along those lines, I actually had another question, because you had mentioned that for the Plant Science Fellowship, the preference is for students from outside of MSU. Is there such preference for the university fellowship as well? Are you aware of that?
That is a requirement.
I see.
So
you can't have like done your undergrad here at MS and then apply for the university fellowship.
That's correct. You need to be an outside student. There's a different kind of retention fellowship that for students who got a bachelor's degree here. I believe it's called a Rasmussen Fellowship, and it's $5,000, like a $5,000 award. I don't recall us ever putting someone forward, but it is something that is available, and we can always research it if a student is interested in possibly being considered for that. That is going to stay here at MSU for a graduate level degree in the department.
And one other fellowship is the Academic Achievement Graduate Assistantship that I'm aware of. And I feel like that, maybe Heather, you can correct me, is that a college level fellowship or assistantship? It doesn't go outside of the college. Am I right about that?
It does, actually. It is
Okay.
a graduate school. It is an assistantship that's provided by the graduate school. That one is also, in order to be eligible, you do need to be a U.S. citizen or permanent resident. But this is something you do not necessarily need to be a new student to MSU to be considered. You can be considered for this assistantship, even if you have received another degree here.
Yeah, so I guess in summary, there are these like 3 fellowships that provide funding for salary for a graduate student in their first year of their graduate studies. I think that the Plant Science Fellowship maybe also covers tuition. Is that right, Anthony?
Yes, that is. And the University Distinguished Fellowship covers 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah, with tuition.
Yeah, at some point the Plant Science Fellowship had options to have 2 years covered. I don't know if that went away or not.
Yeah, they want to fund more students, spread the wealth around a bit more. So they're moving to one year.
Yeah, good to know. Good to know. So it's only, the point is that it's only partial funding for graduate students, and they can't count on this being their only source of funding for the length of the graduate program. And I think that many people may not be aware of that. And one thing that we hadn't really touched on is there anything that the student needs to do on their end to indicate that they're interested in being considered for these? Because some students come in with funding already and they may not even be interested in going forward for any of these. Is that their choice, or is that something that they should let you know, or how does that work?
Well, the recruiting student should just be in communication with the major professor, and that hopefully they will discuss that. But they should, if they want the plant science, if they think they're eligible for the plant science fellowship, they should make it clear in their academic statement of how their research involves plants, and also in, say, an email to me to indicate that they're interested in that fellowship, along with the potential major professor also CC'd on that email would be helpful. The university fellowships are more done at the departmental level in reviewing applicants and determining which ones are going to be most competitive at the university level. But a student can always indicate that they're interested in these, and same with the major professor too.
But you when you review the packages, let's say you decide, okay, these 4 I'm going to be putting forward, you reach out to those students then before you start moving those packages forward, right? And then you say, I'm going to be putting your package forward to these fellowships, or how does that work? How do they find out?
Yes, usually they know before we put those packages out, so they're in the loop. But we would in the conversation with their potential major professor too, it's like, okay, the major professor might indicate, I think this student is competitive for a university distinguished fellowship, please consider her. And I would say sure, and then I would let them know that there's been forwarded to the college, and then the college will communicate with me, and I'll communicate with the major professor and the student. So
yeah, I think that part is not understood by many students and faculty members.
okay.
I should also add. So I think it's important to share that there's a lot of communication in the background that needs to happen. So if you feel like you have a student coming in that should be considered for whatever reason, send an email to Anthony or Heather or both of them and start that communication as soon as you can.
Yep.
And like we said, the deadlines for a lot of these are early December, so students have to have their application in by early December to be able to start the process.
What happens a lot is that, at least for entomology, we go to the entomological society meetings. It's usually October or November, and then a professor meets a student and is convinced that they want to take them on, and then there's a little bit of rush to get them through the system to have them be forwarded for these fellowship programs. But so I understand that you might not know until November.
Yeah, you're right that the entomology meetings are so close to this early December deadline. But the other thing I was going to point out, that usually we say that we don't have a deadline in the department for graduate student applications. I get that question all the time from graduate students. It's very common that they're looking on our website for some sort of a deadline. And so I always have to explain to them that there is no such thing as deadline, unless you're wanting to be considered for these fellowships. So you can submit your application at any time during the course of the year. Just make sure that you have a major professor lined up, because you don't want to pay your $50 or whatever the application is these days, or application fee is these days, and then not have somebody wanting to consider you as a future student.
That is correct.
Yeah. So I guess one other thing that I wanted us to talk about here today is the graduate student handbook, because again, it's one of those obscure documents that lives in our department that I always have to ask my graduate students to look up, because I don't know how many credits they need to take. I keep forgetting, and plus it's a shifting target. We keep changing how many credits, and for PhD students and master's students, and how many internal members from the department they need to have on their committees or from outside the department. I believe that we did make some changes recently about like memberships on the committee. So maybe that's something, Anthony, that is worth touching on. It was, I think, around mainly the PhD student committees that we had some discussions at the faculty meeting that I think have now made their way into the graduate student handbook, maybe over the last 2 years, if I'm not mistaken, where part of the discussion was about opening it up to a few more options to have like non-departmental members. Am I remembering that correctly? So normally we have 4 members on a PhD student committee. We used to have 3 from within the department and 1 from outside the department. And now we can have 2 from within the department, 1 from within the university, and then 1 from outside the university. I may be misstating that, so please correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay, so instead of correcting me when I'm wrong, I'll just let Heather take it, because she has that fresh in her memory.
Yeah, either one of you jump on it, please.
For our PhD committees, we do require a minimum of 4 members. 2 of them do need to be from the Department of Entomology. You can have more from the Department of Entomology, that's fine. The other requirement is you need to have, you need to have 2 tenure system faculty members from the Department of Entomology, one of which is usually the major professor, not always, but usually. And then you need to have a tenure system faculty member from outside of the department that is here at MSU. So essentially you need 3 tenure system faculty. And then you've got that 4th member who can be just about anybody that you want, as long as they're approved to serve on your committee. Most students do stay within MSU. They try to find somebody here at MSU to serve as that 4th member, but it can be a faculty member at another university. It can be someone who is not necessarily tenure system, but they do need to have a terminal degree.
You mean a PhD?
Yes, yes. If in order for someone who is not a tenure system faculty member to serve on a PhD committee, they must have a PhD degree.
Yeah, that's a good point, because we had a discussion over this particular issue that you're talking about just recently, where an extension agent or an educator was somebody that we were considering putting on one of the students' committees, and they have a PhD, so I guess they would then fall into this category, except that I think that on their end in the extension unit within the university, they just don't have a way to account for these activities, I think. So for them to account for that time that they spend on committees was going to be difficult. So yeah, I think that there are some questions over this still, but it's nice to have this flexibility, which I don't think was clear earlier.
Yes, there is an approval process for anybody such as an extension educator who is not part of the tenure system faculty here at MSU. They do need to be approved to serve by the graduate school. That process has changed. So it's now there are essentially what needs to be provided to me or Anthony is the same. But now it's all submitted through an electronic form through the graduate school that is submitted at the department level, usually by myself. But some people are already approved. The transition to the new student information system has kind of caused some issues with that. So we are going through the process of making sure that those who had what's called blanket approval, we've had some non-tenure system faculty approved to serve on committees. Anybody here in the Department of Entomology, they've had a blanket approval. The graduate school has transitioned that to wanting to have faculty, non-tenure system faculty, be approved to serve on each student's committee that they're going to serve for. So let's say we have an academic specialist who is going to serve on 3 student committees this year. They need approval for each different committee. There is a blanket approval process that's quite laborious, but we can certainly do it. It's good for 5 years. And that is something that anybody has questions about, they should definitely come to me and we can work through that process with Anthony and get the appropriate information together so we can get that submitted. Those particular approvals need to be approved here at the department level first, then they move up to the college approves them, and then they go to the graduate school, and then the dean of the graduate school needs to approve them. So it's can take a little bit of time, but usually most people get approved. There's been a very few cases when we've had an issue and we've had to kind of go back and make some changes.
So if it takes I mean, it sounds like it's a lot of steps and a lot of approvals. So I imagine that if you have like a month or two to assemble your committee, then this is going to be really challenging to meet that timeline, right?
That's true. And that's part of the reason why we recommend students really get that process going as soon as possible when they start their degrees, because we like to see students to have their programs approved within the first semester of being here. So the earlier you're able to start forming your committee and get that process done and approved by the department, the sooner everything is able to kind of move forward for you, and a student then doesn't have to worry about getting it done. And that's just one less stressful thing that they need to worry about during graduate school. So it can't, but I think that I get the feeling the graduate school is really trying to streamline the process and make it a little bit easier. That's my hope anyway. Even though they have instituted some changes that make it seem like it's a little bit more work, I think they're trying to figure out ways to make it easier for everybody to have this process go through much quicker.
Okay, yeah, that's super important, I think, to mention that and try to work through the system as you mentioned early. Anthony, did you have anything else to add to that? Committee members or?
Just that there are a lot of diverse faculty on campus that have a multitude of expertise in subdisciplines of entomology, and that it is likely that you can find someone on campus that is at least studying something close to your system. And also to remember that not all committee members need to be an expert on your research system. They can provide guidance on just doing research, doing a dissertation, have comments on just writing style, or even what classes to take. So committee members can be more than just the expert of a specific part of your dissertation research.
I think that's a really good point. I want to go back to, did you say that there's a lot of resources within MSU because it's a difficult process to have somebody from outside of MSU approved for the same kinds of reasons that Heather just went over. Is that also similarly laborious?
Well, I mean, I think we were talking about the same thing, that that if you want a committee member outside of the university, it does, there's paperwork to fill out, and that could take some time. But
Is
so
it, is
that if
it, sorry, Heather,
go
is
on.
it similar to like an outside of MSU member goes through a similar process as, for example, an adjunct professor from within MSU? Is that pretty much the same?
It is.
Okay.
It's the same. The important thing to kind of keep in mind when you want to have somebody from outside of MSU is there really needs to be a justification for why this person is a good fit for your committee and why someone that is here on campus isn't. That's something that the graduate school does want to see. And it's not to say that that's a bad thing and you should avoid doing that. Absolutely not. Students should get the committee that is the most appropriate for them. And if that includes a professor that's at Colorado State University or the University of Florida, then so be it. And that the effort should be put forth to get that person as an official committee member. I'd also like to mention though, too, there is absolutely no issues with someone in that position being an advisor or kind of, a student can always make the choice to not necessarily have them be an official committee member, but they can certainly provide, there's nothing saying that somebody outside of the university can't provide information, can't provide assistance to a degree program. A student might just decide that they don't want them to be an official member, but kind of an advisor in a way for a certain aspect of a degree. That's completely acceptable. I think a lot of students think that because a faculty member is going to be assisting them in something, they need to make that person official, and they don't, as long as the faculty member agrees that that's not necessary. So.
Yeah, I usually talk about this with my graduate students because I find that like having a 5 or 6 person committee is just such a headache to find the time to meet that that I usually just tell them, let's have an unofficial member because you're never going to find the time to meet. So
exactly.
let's not have that headache.
Exactly. There's nothing wrong with trying to make things like forming a committee member meeting easier. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. The fewer the official people, the better sometimes.
Sorry, Anthony, I think I cut you off. Go ahead.
No, you didn't. No, that is true. It's hard, herding professors like herding cats, or so getting everyone to find a date to discuss something can be very difficult.
Yeah. So we're coming to the end of our time, and I wanted to give you an opportunity to say anything else that you might think is important to mention, either for new graduate students or for the current graduate students in the last few minutes. Anthony, let's start with you. Is there anything that you'd like to put out there?
Sure. Just some helpful advice, and simply is to communicate that. And for new and old graduate students, keeping a continuous open line of communication with their professor and committee is really important. It makes things go a lot smoother, and it reduces potential conflict that might arise. And so, at this time of your life, this is, as a grad student, you're here to learn, and that is your main job. And so enjoy the learning, and it may get hard sometimes, but in the end, it'll be all right. And if you are having anxiety or some difficulties, there are very good resources on campus. The Clinical Counseling and Psychiatric Center in Olin. You could see their websites. Their acronym is CAPS. They provide online counseling and person-on-person and group counseling, and also a lot of resources for you just to read before you may engage them. So
thanks for mentioning that. Yeah, I also know they have group meetings sometimes for graduate students specifically, so that might be an interesting one to look into further.
Yep.
And then, of course, Anthony, as you know, in your role as the graduate director, they can also reach out to you, I'm assuming, right?
absolutely, or the chairperson or the assistant chair, or to a faculty member that they feel comfortable talking to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks. And Heather, is there anything that you want to share and some parting thoughts from you?
I just wanted to mention that, you know, my door is always open to faculty and graduate students. So any questions, of course, anybody has about the process, the requirements of getting a degree, even financial, even where a room is or how to get into a class. I am always available, and email is the best way to reach me usually, because I'm always on email for the most part during 8 to 5. So please feel free to reach out to me. Come on into my office. I'm located in the Natural Science Building, room 245. I am the assistant to our chairperson. So if you need to reach out to our chair, contact me. I'll get you an appointment, and or just come on in and say hi. I haven't met a lot of our graduate students in person for the last 2 years, and I'd really like to. So come on in. I'm here working in the office now 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. So I'm here to answer your questions and help you through this process.
Yes,
And
thank you very much, Heather, for all your knowledge and help over the years. I mean, it's been invaluable. I can't even explain how invaluable it is, but
thank you. Thank you, Sophia.
it's awesome. So there are some things that we haven't talked about that are forthcoming additions to the graduate handbook. So I'd love to have you back maybe in a few months to talk about further things that are on the horizon for graduate students. And yeah, thanks for sharing all your knowledge, and hopefully this was helpful to graduate students both within our department and outside our department. And I'll leave some links in our show notes for our website that has further explanations on how to get into graduate school here in our department. So thanks everybody for listening today, and we will see you in the next podcast. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Sophia.
Thank you.